Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to take a look at the final of the Earth story, prehistoric mammals, and not necessarily just mammals, as we've had like a fish and stuff in here as well, but really excited to kind of polish off these reviews and keeping my fingers crossed that we see more from them at some point in the near future, because I feel like they actually have a lot of potential and I would love to see some more stuff from them moving into the future, especially when it comes to these original sculpts and stuff. Again, really fun stuff overall, but this time we actually have some direwolf figures, and that's really cool because we really don't get very many figures for this species ever. You know, we did have like the Rebor version, and there was a Star Ace Toys version, like more of a statue, and that's about it. That's all I know of when it comes to this species. So pretty neat to actually have a very interesting interpretation of this, but as you can see, we don't just have one, we actually have an entire family, and that's something that, again, many companies don't do. So pretty cool on Earth Story to create an entire family of these direwolf. Now, I will be upfront and honest with you guys, I am not the most knowledgeable person when it comes to this species. So whether these are accurate or not, I really can't tell you because I don't know nearly enough about them to judge them on the accuracy department. Again, I'm not all that familiar with the species overall, but I know that they are meant to be direwolves and they look pretty cool, so definitely a neat looking figure. So we're going to go ahead, again, go one by one here as far as these go. As we can see, they all feature the tags again, just like we've been seeing through this entire second round of the figures. I don't know if they've given up on the boxes or if they just have two different styles of their releases, but these ones definitely have tags rather than boxes. So I'm going to remove this tag and also readjust the camera here, and we'll bring in the first one. This one is, well, actually they all look pretty ferocious, but this one looks really angry. He also looks like he may have been kicked by a horse or something because his eye now looks like it's trailing somewhere else. Definitely does not look like it's placed very nicely. They are painted with a yellow, and my camera doesn't want to focus. There we go. Painted with a yellow and given a black pupil, and the actual paintwork looks pretty good except for the placement of the pupil. We do have a nice glossy black for the entire inside of the eye area, which I don't know if I think that is a good thing or a bad thing. There's also a white that kind of runs under the eye, and I feel like we see, yeah, I'm looking over at the other ones, we definitely see that same thing through all of the figures. We can see some grayish dry brushing up here on the top of the head in a few areas as well. This one definitely has a ferocious look to it with the mouth open, having a bit of a snarling sort of a look to it. It definitely looks like the type of direwolf I would not want to encounter. We can see the mouth again being open, gives us a nice chance to look at the tongue, which looks pretty decent, and the detail on the inside of the mouth, a little generic, but not half bad. The teeth are all sculpted individually and painted individually, which is nice, and it doesn't really look sloppy as far as the paintwork goes, which is also nice. My camera doesn't want to focus. There we go. The teeth don't look super impressive as far as like looking sharp. They're definitely rounded, which we can see, but you know, I'd imagine that these were meant for adults and kids alike to collect, so they don't want to make something that's going to be potentially dangerous. But when you look at it from the front, you can now see the horrible placement of the pupils. This one, he's looking all over the place. I don't know what he's focused on. He's angry at us, but also angry at things to his left and right. But as you can see, moving up and over the top of the head, again, the fur looks pretty nice, and as we lead back, they do apply a dry brushing, which really helps to make the fur detail pop. I will say, again, sculpt-wise, when it comes to the fur, it's pretty impressive. Like, there's a lot of nice waviness. It looks very thick, which is also nice. There's also a good bit of variation of color as we have different shades of grays. We also have a light gray, again, that's been dry brushed over. You have like some yellowish browns as you move down, and then some whites as you lead down into the underside. We can also take note to the fact that this is definitely the male of the family here, but as you move through, you have some darker shading and stuff that picks up here and there. We can see the elbow right here as we lead down through the course of the front leg. The feet look okay. The toes are sculpted pretty nicely, but the paintwork of the nails is kind of sloppy. But the fur detail becomes really quite fine as you lead down into the feet of the wolf, and as you move up, you can also see, I didn't mention this before, but kind of like some scruffy fur moving through the neck. We can also see how it's kind of scrunched up because of the turn in the head, which is nice. As we lead back into the body, we continue to again see the scruffy fur. We can also see that it's really quite skinny, so has kind of almost like a sick sort of appearance to it, like it really looks like it needs to eat something, and that kind of extends back here into the rear leg as well. It looks fairly unhealthy, but we do have some nice fur detail again leading down, nice variation of color, again starting out with the scruffy fur, leading into the really fine fur as we move down into the rear feet as well. Again, the nails are painted pretty sloppily and not really that great, but then again, I mean, the way they painted them is honestly the way that they had to, because you want those small nails for something like this, and the way that they've sculpted the nails makes them look huge. So I mean, they were kind of in a tough spot there. I think they did what they could, really. But then you can see the head sculpt from the opposing side as we move back. Obviously, we've got a really sharp turn to the head and neck of this one. You can see the leg is picking up off of the ground over here as it's clearly about to kind of step into that direction to attack whatever it's angry about. As we move through, you can see the same style of detailing when it comes to the fur, same style paintwork and everything. The dry brushing is a little bit too intense and doesn't really look that great. I'm not a big fan of it on this one, but it is what it is, I guess. As you lead back, you can see the same again for the rear leg in a little bit of a different position compared to the leg on the opposing side. We also have a nice big fluffy tail back here, which looks pretty nice as far as the sculpt goes. And then the underbelly again has not only the genitalia, but some nice fur detail down here, as well as the light tone of color. So that one's a pretty cool one. It's not great, but it's pretty cool. I just wish the eyes were painted better because it looks crazy. Then we've got the one that I would assume is probably the female. So if we look at this one, the eyes are placed a little bit better on this one, but still not picture perfect. However, they are way better than what we had seen on the first one. This one does have a little bit of difference as far as the coloration goes. The other one has more of like a dark grayish tone, whereas this one has more of like a brownish tone. And one thing that I definitely like about this one over the other one is the dry brushing techniques they've applied look a lot more natural and a lot smoother. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with this company, is rather than coming up with a nice effective color that meshes well with the other colors and dry brushing it over, they mostly always rely on that light gray for a lot of their figures. And I feel like they've applied, you know, some more variation of color. There is some of the light gray here, which doesn't look quite as intense or ugly as some of the others, like the first wolf we had seen. But this one also has some brownish dry brushing, which I also like. As you move through the face, we have, again, kind of a vicious sort of snarling look for this one. I kind of would have liked to have seen maybe a more calm sort of a look for this one, just because the other one had the same sort of vicious look on it, maybe even a little more vicious than this one. But at the same time, I guess if one of the wolves are upset, maybe they should all be, so I guess they're all kind of barking and angry at whatever is presented in front of them, so it makes sense. It just would have been nice to see a little bit of a difference between them. But as you can see, again, the mouth is wide open on this one. We have the teeth, focus camera, the teeth sculpted out, looking kind of ugly actually in some areas. Like that fang right there in front of us is very thick and almost looks like a block that's just been applied to the inside of the mouth. The other teeth look pretty decent, and the paintwork again is okay for in there. That tooth looks a little better, but not great. But definitely a little bit sloppy as far as that goes. Not great as far as like the sculpting I'm saying is sloppy. The teeth, the paintwork of the teeth looks okay, but the sculpting looks iffy in that area, at least as far as that one fang goes. But as we move back, again, we have like that light tone for the face. We start to pick up some variations of browns as we have lighter and darker shades of browns moving through the body. We also have some nice wavy fur throughout the course of the figure, again, which is just like we saw again on the other figure. We also have some very impressive, like I already mentioned, dry brushing with a lighter brown, which I think is really well done on this figure and definitely helps to not only highlight the fur, but just add so much life to the figure as a whole. I just wish they wouldn't have applied that light gray dry brushing they are so obsessed with. I feel like if they didn't apply that at all, it would have actually benefited the figure greatly when it comes to how good it looks. There's even actually kind of like a dark brown sort of striping effect that moves over the back that I'm just now noticing. But the fur on this is very impressive. It's really wavy. There's lots of impressive fine detail when it comes to the fur. They really did a great job of sculpting the fine detail out of this one. As you move down, you can see this one as well is in a walking pose. The coloration, the brown actually leads down into the foot this time. And again, nails are painted pretty much the same way, where we have those little tiny nails and they're kind of sloppy, painted with a glossy black. As you move back, you can see this one as well is fairly thin, just like we saw on the other one. You can see how like the skin is kind of stretching off off of the stomach with the legs sort of leaning back, and just the motion of the wolf as it's moving forward kind of stretching that skin. We can also make out like the hip bone and everything there through the course of the top of the thigh and basically through the fur. The tail on this one is held closer into the body, whereas the tail of the other one was sort of extended out. As you move down, you can see the foot sculpt and everything here on this one looks pretty decent, just like it did on the other one. We can see that this one is definitely a female, as opposed to the other one that we had seen, which had very clear and obvious genitalia on the underside. Moving over here to the opposing side, again, pretty close to the same look as the other side, but just a little bit of a different position, as this leg is kind of picking up off of the ground and walking along. I don't know how much I'm a big fan of the brown right here, because it kind of runs down and we see it on the outside of the leg, but then when you come in here it's all white and just looks inconsistent and kind of awkward. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I feel like maybe they should have transitioned it down to the white paws like we saw on the other one. I'm not going to go super in depth on this one, because sculpt wise for the most part it looks pretty close to what we had seen on the first version, but definitely better paint apps on that one. And then the final one, and I have to take the tag off of this one as well, the final is the pup. We have a little one here that is included in our family. This one also has its mouth open, also looks quite angry. The eyes are again not placed very well. The left eye is, or our right currently, but the left eye of the wolf is nicely placed, but the right eye is trailing off somewhere else. I don't know where that one's looking. But you can see the teeth look okay on this one. Again, kind of bulky when it comes to the fangs and not picture perfect, but it looks okay. This one has a little bit of a left turn to the head, which we can see. Same style of paint, and of course we have that awkward gray dry brushing on this one, which does definitely look out of place, just like they honestly all have had that going on, but the female I think was the best as far as that goes. A little bit of a different coloration for this one, as we have like a dark stripe that moves through the body and then different shades of browns throughout, and then a lighter shade of like a light gray or an off-white here for the underside. It also looks like this one might be a young female as well, which is actually kind of cool to be able to tell that. You can see we do have that light tone kind of dry brushed around the eye as well, helping to highlight that area. The nose and everything sculpted out, painted with a glossy-ish black sort of, but my camera really doesn't want to focus on it for some reason. It's irritating me. But the pose again, just like the others, kind of walking, taking a step. Actually, this one's more so kind of steadfast to the ground. It actually is even extending its legs kind of forward, so it looks like it's basically in the midst of a bark, I feel like, and isn't, super ready to kind of lunge in there and get into the attack mode, but the others definitely look like they are, maybe to protect their pup. But you can see the tail back here, again, nice fluffy tail. It darkens as you lead down to the end of the tail, which is also nice. The fur detail on this is pretty decent, not quite as impressive as we see on the adults, but still pretty nicely done. So I would say the pup is actually a very nicely done figure, and my second favorite. I would say my favorites go the female, the adult female, then the pup, then the male, as far as the way they all look. But again, that was definitely a little bit of a lengthy, closer look, because there was a bit to get through as far as these figures go. But you can see once they are all standing next to each other, they do look really cool. They actually quite nicely create an impressive diorama of direwolves, so I have to give them credit for that. But as far as a size goes, they're not huge, that's for sure. They're nicely sized. I would say actually quite conveniently sized. They're definitely the smallest of the direwolf that I have, but as far as a length goes, if we go from the snout, it would be a little further if we went from the cheek, but it'd be impossible to reach that. So from the snout to the tail, about 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters for the male, and then height-wise, just shy of 3.5 inches or almost 8 centimeters on the dot. As far as a height for the female, pretty much the same thing, honestly. So they're right there in the same height. Lengthwise, about 5.5 inches, or actually if we go from the snout to the opposing leg there, because that leg is extended out a little bit, you're looking at more like 6 inches or around 15 centimeters. As my chair back here is making some loud noises because I need to tighten some screws on it. But for the pup, you are looking at about just shy of 4 inches or around 10 centimeters in length. And then for a height, a little bit over 1 3/4 inches or just shy of 5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A Human Being next to our Earth Story Direwolf family. And you can see again, they're fairly decently sized. sized, but definitely not huge, which is one of the many reasons why I actually like these, because again, it is nice to have a much more conveniently sized direwolf to enter into my collection. We've also got the elasmotherium, which is pretty close to the same size, and then again our dinotherium as well for one more comparison. Now when it comes to wolves, or direwolves specifically, as I already mentioned, I really only have two versions of a direwolf in my collection, and both are much larger than these. And, that would be the Star Ace version, which is a statue and not really something that's going to compare well here. And then we also have the Rebor version, which as well, again, is quite massive. And the fact that I have a severe lack of wolves in my collection means I really don't have any other similar figures that I feel like would compare well with these guys, which is unfortunate. So I guess we'll just do a few randoms. As we have a Mattel Velociraptor, which you can see is a little bit taller, but kind of similar in size. The Collectae Deluxe Dimetrodon, which is also, again, taller because of the sail, but also kind of similar in size. The Schleich Diabloceratops, which we can see is just a hair smaller. And the Safari LTD Tyrannus, which as well is kind of similar in size, but definitely a little bit smaller than our direwolves. So these Earth Story direwolf figures are pretty fun. As I mentioned at the beginning of the review, I am definitely no expert on this species, so when it comes to accuracy, I can't tell you for sure how accurate or how far off they are. But when it comes to looking like pretty cool wolf figures, they are really nicely done. They definitely have a pretty cool look to them. They're very highly detailed and probably have some of the nicest fine detail out of any of the Earth Story figures that I had seen up until this point. So that's definitely a plus for these figures. Like the fur and everything looks fantastic. The paint applications are pretty decent, but the dry brushing is definitely not my favorite part. I would say if you eliminated the dry brushing for the most part, the paint apps, and of course corrected the placement of the eyes, the paint apps would be okay on these guys. I think it looks, nice and natural, and potentially the type of color I would expect to see on a direwolf. So that's a plus. I just think the dry brushing, the light gray dry brushing specifically, is far too intense on some of the figures and doesn't look that natural. But there is a good bit of variation of color, and it's also pretty smooth when it comes to the transitions. And I also like the fact that each of them have a little bit of a different look as far as the coloration goes from each other. That's a nice little touch as well. So pretty cool, pretty ferocious gang here of direwolves from Earth Story. So if you are interested, I will include a link in the description where you can purchase these right now. So make sure you check that link, pick them up if you want them, and like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.